In this presentation, we will be going over the Tiny School registration system, a project completed by Danielle Avery, Crochet Jones, Joshua LaFerriere, Francisca Rosales, and Joshua Trujillo. Going through the presentation, we will be looking at the use cases, add new student, followed by enter new class, update student info, register classes for student, online class conditions, verify course map, update fees, and finishing off with check enrollment and print class list.
Use case 13, add a new student. The description of this: the student meets with admissions and enrolls in university, thereby creating a database entry for student. In the use case flowchart, we see here that the student is added, and then after that, the student is given a student ID number. The use case 13 is also related to use case 10 and use case 1. Use case 13 user interface gives you student registration, the new student's information such as student ID number, their first name, their last name, their email address. It gives you the options to submit it, to edit, and to complete the registration. Use case 7, enter a new class. With use case 7, we need a course ID and a class section number inputted. After that, we go into the times and dates of class are inputted. There's a decision to make if there's teachers available to assign. In this situation, there is, so we'll assign a teacher to a class. Next, we go to, is there rooms available to assign? In this situation, there is, so we assign a room to the class. After that, we go into any conflicts with existing information. In this situation, we do not have any conflicts, so we keep moving on to class is successfully inputted. And it's also, use case 7 is related to use case 8, such as cancel a class, use case 9, check class conflicts, and use case 1, student sees advisor. Use case 7, user interface. In the first box that you see here, we have the course number, the course ID. In the second box, we have the instructor's name. In the third box, we have the date and the time of the class. And it has the schedule open, and it has two options of enrolling or canceling.
It receives input from student ID number, is given to the student from use case 13, add new student, and then the enrollment looks at it and then verifies that the student's enrolled. If not, he sends them back, although we're going to assume that he is enrolled. So we start the process for update student info, and the first step in that is student meets with enrollment and provides basic information to enrollment such as address, phone, email, etc. And if you look here, student ID number inputted to access records. The next step is referencing the student's ID number. Enrollment inputs new information into system. So right here you see the next step is phone number, past transcripts, address, email is updated and inputted. Now after this process completes, there's two other possible outcomes. It could either go to the student sees the advisor next, so this is a prerequisite to the student meeting the advisor, or print student info, because you need information in the system before any student info can be printed. But we're going to assume that it's going to student sees advisor. User interface. So here we see that we have student ID number, look up student information. Enrollment would put in the student ID number here, click this button, everything autofills in last name, phone number, and if it's missing, the enrollment can input that information and then their save changes.
So for use case 1, the student meets with advisor to add class. The actor here is the advisor in this use case. The preconditions are the student has already met with admissions and has been entered as a new student, as well as meeting with enrollment and updating any relevant information. The student has records in system. Then the student can continue with adding a class. The student is meeting with the advisor. The basic course includes a search of the student's records by the student's ID, verifying the admissions, the student is enrolled, and that all fees have been paid at this time. If all fees have not been paid at this time, the student will be advised to go to the accounting department. The advisor will then verify the current date and the current registration period listed for this student. The advisor will also verify that the student's academic standing is not failing or not on academic probation at this time by generating his GPA from his past coursework. If the GPA is lower than a 1.5, the student cannot register at this time. But if the GPA is over a 1.5 but still under a 2.0, the student is on academic probation and still not able to register at this time because the student is required to be in good standing. If the class is an online course, for use case 14, the online class conditions. Called by register classes for a student. Basic course for an online class include verify the student has taken an online course in past history with passing grades, as well as verifying student's GPA is over a 2.5. If none of these conditions are met, inform student the maturity requirements that are required for these online classes. Post conditions include verifying a student meets maturity requirements. The advisor begins to verify coursework by verifying course map, including an enrollment calling this up before evaluating students' graduation requirements. The advisor pulling up a list of courses tying in with the student's major and courses met prerequisites. And if the student has declared a major, the courses will be pulled up. Otherwise, the student is informed to declare a major by the second year if the student is still undecided. They are also being advised to meet all of their general education requirements. Then, the student can continue with adding a class and specifying the classes he wishes to take at this time. The post conditions for this use case include
the student has been able to add his courses. Use case 05 is called check enrollment / print class list, and that is called not necessarily directly afterwards, but is called because classes have to be added for students for there to be any enrollment updates and for class lists to be printed. Use case 03, update fees, is called after classes have been added for students because new classes that are added will modify the number of units that are enrolled and will trigger fees to be updated. The user interface for use case 01, register classes for student, also covers use case 14, online class, also covers use case 2, verify course map, includes a window that has a text box for inputting the student ID number, has a text box for including the course ID number. It also has course description. When you put in the course ID, it also shows the course number. It also shows the course section, and it specifies whether it's an online course. And then the teacher is able to check out current GPA over on the right hand side and also verify past enrolled courses. Also, this has information for the course map, so this could be the same window that enrollment uses, whether it's the advisor or the other party that uses that function. It also shows current term enrolled courses, and it shows courses prerequisites. And if the teacher wants to add a course and it needs to have an exception, such as online class requirements checks, you could hit the checkbox and then click add. And it also has information for student name and student address and student phone number and the completed number of units the student has and whether the student's in academic standing, good standing or not, and if the student has any outstanding fees. And that includes most of the information on this user interface, and it covers at least 3 different use cases.
UCO3, which is closely connected to UCO1. or the student is paying back a loan that was recently borrowed. Accessing the student record by inputting the student's ID number. That is, making sure that all the fees for the students to attend the school are accounted for and paid in full. When the check is complete, the system will then show the updated fees. Depending on and drop down to part-time from full-time, and if the student is part-time, then there will be a 75% cost per unit, and if the student is full-time, it will be 100%. Following that, the flat base amount is added. The add-on services are applied, which could consist of campus activity, insurance, and past due amounts from previous semesters. Next, it needs to be confirmed if the student will attend classes that semester. Fees are then paid by students in part or in full, and if there is a balance that needs to be paid because a student paid a partial payment, then the system will update and any balance that remains will be updated and recorded. After that, now the fees for the student can be printed.
The accounting department.
Enter the student's ID number into the field and then proceed by clicking Submit. The student's last name and first name will pop up. And if any classes have been added, there would be a total. If the student has parking pass, there would be an amount set next to parking pass. And if there are any fees for the health center, there would be a set amount there.
Payments indicates any past payments that have been made.
And after adding up all those charges, which would be the classes added, the parking pass, and healthing fees,
any past payments towards the current semester are subtracted.
And then the total due would then show up. And if there are any other things that needs to be edited, the advisor would press edit and then edit those things. Next, the advisor would hit save changes. UCL 5 begins with classes added by the student to checking the enrollment and printing the class list in order for the teacher to be able to pull up his or her classes so that they may be printed out. If the teacher is registered for classes, the class schedule will pop up and it will then be printed. Or no classes will show up. For UCL 5, which is check enrollment and printing the class list, a teacher is checking to see which students are enrolled into his or her class. They do this by entering a student's ID number. The student must have already registered for this class for them to pop up on this. Professor is looking at a page which consists of class enrollment, class schedule, and the student's transcripts. Also, there's some personal information such as contact information for the student, phone number, address, campus email, and their mailing address. After the professor has checked the student's information for his or her class, the teacher can print all related student information.